Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I know I look a little weird right now. That's because I have no brows on. This just goes to show how important brows are in framing your face and just completing your look. On one side, I'll show you guys how I fill in my brows using a pencil, and on the other side, I will use a pomade or a powder. When I fill in my brows with the powder or the pomade, I pretty much do the exact same thing. It's just a different product, but it's the same steps, the same brush, so I decided to just fill one of those. So as you can see, I do not have strong brows at all. I never had strong brows to begin with, even when I was a child, like before I overplucked them. I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate. Back in the day, like those really thin brows were in. So I've been growing them out for a few years now, and this is as good as it's gonna get. So I just gotta accept that I will never have full brows, and you just gotta work with what you got. So let's get started. I'm gonna just grab my ABH brow definer. This is like a tip for beginners. Like if you're not sure the shape of your brow, like where your arch should be, where it should end, where it should start, then this tip will be really helpful for you. I'm gonna grab my little pencil and I'm gonna hold it straight up right beside my nostril. So wherever that pencil hits, that's where the head should be. That's where the brow should start. So I did a little line there. And to figure out where your arch is, you're going to just keep your pencil right up against your nostril, but you're going to rotate it so that the pencil lines up with the outer edge of your iris. So looking straight ahead here, I'm just going to rotate it, and this is where my arch should be. So I'm going to do a little line right there. And now to figure out where the tail should end, you're just going to rotate it so that the pencil lines up with your lower lash line. So mine is going to be about right here. Draw a little line. It's right here. A little dot. See, so now I have those 3 points on my brow. And now you're just going to have to connect the dots. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Right up against the nostril, holding the pencil straight. Little line. And about right here should be the arch. And then right here. So for this eyebrow, I'm going to use a pencil to fill it in, just because this is my good brow. I know, it doesn't look very great, but this is the good brow. And this, I'm going to use a pomade to fill in, just because I find that a pencil is a lot easier. So I'm going to do it for the easy brow. And then for the more difficult brow, I'm going to use the pomade because I know a lot of people do use pomade, and I'll show you guys how I fill in these sparse areas. And I did have my brows tattooed like when I was 15 or 16 years old, so I do have a little bit of the old tattoo over there in case you guys can see it, but it's mostly faded away by now. So when I'm filling in my brows, I always start underneath the arch and I do the tail first. So I'm doing little light strokes, and since I have this marker, I know exactly where the arch should be. So I'm going to start there, and then I'm going to bring it out to where I marked where the tail should end. So now I have the rough outline of my tail. After creating that line, I'm going to go to the top of my arch right up here, and I'm just going to connect it to the tail that I just drew. I'm going to just use light feathery strokes to mimic brow hairs. And then for the top of my arch right here, I like to add a little bit more, bring it outwards a little bit towards my temple. And I do this so that the tail of my brow will kind of go outwards and towards like my temple and my ear, as opposed to going downwards and making my eye look droopy or heavy. And I'm going to use downward strokes to fill in the top right here, because that's the way that the hairs naturally grow. And then when I get to the bottom of my brow, I'll draw strokes going upwards. So it has like that crosshair effect, and it will look the most natural. And then as I get to about here, the head of the brow, I'll do little flicks that are going straight up, because that's the way the brow hairs grow. And if you're finding there are any harsh lines, you can just take your spoolie and brush it through. So now majority of my brow is filled in. And what I like to do at this point is I'll hold the mirror kind of far away, because sometimes when you're like up close like this with the mirror, you don't see how it looks like on your whole face. You see how the brow is, but sometimes you can get carried away really easy, or you won't be able to see spots that are missing. So I'm going to hold it back, and I'm going to see that top of my brow right here needs a little bit extra. See how it's it looks like it's going downwards? It looks like I have like angry brows like this. So I'm going to just do little downward strokes, same thing, right across the top. Take my pencil and do like a straight line. Really light line going across the bottom just to clean it up and give it that like straight edge. Okay, so for this side needs a lot more help than the other side. At the tail here, I basically have like 5 hairs. So I'm going to take my DIPBROW and I'm going to take my ANASTASIA 14 brush. I just scoop out about this much, and I'll grab the cap and just wipe my brush back and forth in it to make sure that there isn't any excess products on the side and that the tip is nice and thin. This is what's going to give you that really nice hair-like stroke. So using the same markings, I'm going to start at the arch of my brow. So I'm going to start right under here. That's where the arch should be. And I'm going to connect it, and it's going to end right where that marker is. You don't have to bring it down here. This just kind of tells you where the brow should actually end. It doesn't mean that your brow has to come down this low, right? It could end out here, it could end in here. It's just as long as it's following this plane right here. So now I've drawn the tail. I'm going to flip it to the spoolie side and brush it out so that it's not such a harsh line. And then I'm going to flip my brush so that the point is facing upwards. And starting at the very top of my brow here, I'm going to do really light strokes going in the direction of the tail. So just basically diagonally towards my ear. I do like longer strokes and shorter strokes just because that's what's going to give you the most natural effect. And I really like when you can see like the little hair strokes right up top here. So I focus on trying to get like that nice crisp little line. Once I've put most of the product onto the tail of the brow, whatever's left over, I will start to outline the bottom of my brow and go towards the head. Now I'm going to flip the brush so that the point is facing downwards and pointing towards my nose. I'm going to just really lightly, short strokes, draw a straight line, just outlining the bottom of my brow. It's a very faint line, and then brush it out. And I'm just going back into the cap now with whatever product I scooped onto there earlier. And now I'm going to start to fill in the center of my brow. Starting from the bottom, I'm going to flip my brush so that the point is facing downwards. And I'm going to draw little upward strokes. Upward and diagonally back towards the arch of the brow. To fill in the top of my brow, I'm going to flip my brush so that the point is facing up. And draw little diagonal strokes here. Diagonally down in the same direction as the tail. For the head of the brow, point's going to be facing down. I'm going to do little upward strokes. Instead of diagonally back, I'm going to go straight up. I'm going to do this until I hit that little mark right there. And if you go up a little bit too high, just take your finger and rub it. So now I'm going to go back to the tail of my brow, taking a little bit more from the cap. There's not a lot in the cap. This is actually dry, so I don't get a lot out at all. But I'm going to just darken up and extend the tail of the brow. So brows are done. They don't have to be identical, but they should be pretty close. They want to be sisters, not twins. So now I'm just going to clean them up with some concealer and then set them. So I'm just going to grab a little concealer brush. And I like to only put the concealer right at the arch of my brow to give that area a little bit of a lift. And now for the fun part, I'm just going to spray some setting spray onto my spoolie. I'm also going to spray the soap. It's my favorite thing to use as a brow gel. And I use the spoolie only for setting my brows and for the soap because soap does get built up in it. So just swirl my brush in there. I'll just brush this through the brows. When I'm setting the brows, I brush the hairs in the same direction that I drew them. So towards the front here, I'll flick it straight up, and then at the center of my brow, I'll kind of have it going diagonally upwards, and then at the tail, flick it out towards my temple and then slowly start to bring it down towards my ear. So this is all preference, but I like when you can see the little hairs sticking up there. But if you didn't like that, you could just take your spoolie and then run it across the top to smooth them down. But I like it like that just because it looks a little bit more bushy and a little bit more natural. It looks like I actually have more hairs than I do, so I leave it. So I hope you guys found this video useful. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next video.